number 3, The Rock, number 2, Hulk Hogan, and number 1, hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom, SP3, here for the Takedown on SI, special exclusive. This is called the Takedown Discussions. And today we're going to be talking about my very controversial list that has been causing a ruckus on social media among fans and wrestlers themselves. The top 20 greatest WWE wrestlers of all time over on SI.com. I am joined by my esteemed colleague, writer extraordinaire, interviewer extraordinaire, Dariel Figueroa. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that lovely intro. That was amazing. You certainly boosted my confidence with that.
That's what I'm all about. I'm all about intros with these podcast type things. That's what I'm best at. That's my niche. But we're here to discuss my article for SI.com, the top 20 greatest WWE wrestlers of all time, because for some reason, a couple of bigger Twitter and Reddit handles caught on to it. Like, I think we published this back in like September, but it just recently just got some waves in the social media world. Dariel, what was kind of your reaction to seeing all that? Me personally, as the person who wrote the article, I was quite surprised when you guys started sending links of different handles that I follow that caught on to it, because I was like, damn, I like forgot about this list. This was like a month ago.
Yeah, no, I love that it was a slow burn, it worked his way into the ether of the pro wrestling net. And we saw Becky Lynch share it. We saw a couple other, people in the wrestling media and wrestlers share it. And that's always awesome, because it's important that we're not only, telling the news as it is and providing these facts for our audience, but also giving our opinions, because these wrestlers, they do a great deal of work inside the ring and outside the ring. And it's important that we put shine on the ones that are doing it better than others,
Absolutely agree with you there. And that's really kind of like the thing with like the features that I've been doing for SI is that I try not to always go by my own personal opinion. I try to have like a certain kind of criteria with a lot of the lists that I do. So to kind of give you guys, watching kind of a background behind this, I was given this task of this list by our editor extraordinaire, Harris Friedman, who gave me the assignment of, first, it was the top 10 greatest WWE wrestlers of all time. So I basically put this list together, I believe back in September, where I was like, okay, so I'm doing this. It's not my top 10 favorite wrestlers, it's greatest. So I think that what people have to understand is that you have to separate your favorites from greatest. Because I saw a lot of the different opinions where people that disagreed with the list because their favorite wasn't included in the list. But I feel with greatest, it's a broad spectrum that you have to have some type of criteria. And sometimes with your criteria, if you have different brackets of you're going to do it on this, and this, the one you said this first for is probably the one you're most important and most you're looking at. So when it comes to WWE, I don't know about you, Dariel, but I've always gone on the belief for WWE for pretty much a decade now that WWE is about the bottom line. It's about making the most money. They're the biggest promotion in the world. And that sometimes whoever is the best wrestler in the ring doesn't really matter. It really matters who's the one who is the biggest star and who is making the most money. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely one of the top criteria. And I know Kevin Nash would agree with you, because every time he's asked about, who's the best, he's like, who made the most money? Hogan is of the same, cut from the same cloth, where he would say the same thing. And it really is true. It's whoever is the biggest box office attraction is, Vince McMahon in the past and now Triple H, they're not pushing guys that aren't making money. They're pushing the guys who are having these great fan reactions, who are selling a ton of merchandise, who are going out, having the best in-ring product, having the best product on the mic, and that translates to dollars. So It's by no accident that we have certain superstars who have exceeded what the normal threshold is for box office, in terms of selling tickets and merchandise and everything else. And it's the superstars who are the most popular with the fans, or even the most hated by the fans. You see guys like Dom pulling in a lot of merchandise, and but that's kind of a superstar that fans love to hate. So it's not that they actually hate him; they're entertained by that guy, very very much so. So I mean, as it pertains to box office, like that should be the top criteria, I would say.
Yeah, so that was probably like the first thing I thought about was like who their drawing power, who's the biggest stars in WWE as far as when it came to making money all time. And the number one criteria, even I think above that, is what they did in WWE. Because that was another thing that I saw a lot of people mention, and even you in our chat to pull back the curtain was like, no Flair in the list, and I think a lot of people answered it for me before I even could. I was like, when I think of Ric Flair, I think of like, if I think about his entire career, of course I'm going to think about '92 and the Royal Rumble, but what really people have to realize with Ric Flair, the only time he was like, no, you could consider him having an argument to be number one guy in WWE was from 91 to the beginning of 93. That is just such a small portion of Ric Flair's career. You're right. That like I think people that grew up or are younger than me and you will think about, oh man, he was in WWE from the end of WCW until he retires in 2008, that 7-year run. And I'm just like, he was like what, 50 going on 60?
I remember he had when he stopped competing, he was around like 55, 56 or something like that. I actually went to that WrestleMania 24 at the Orange Bowl in Florida and saw him retire. Because I'm such a Flair mark, like, so I had to go see Flair and Michaels, and it was fantastic. What an amazing moment. But you're absolutely right. He had that, he left WCW as it goes. Came over, won the Royal Rumble. I think it was 92. He won the Royal Rumble, and got the title. That was the first time they put the title on the line. And by the next year, he was already wrapping up. So I mean, you're absolutely right. That was a mistake on my part, not realizing, because I am one of those people who forgot that like Flair only spent 2 years at the top of his game in WWE. The rest of the time was in NWA. That arguably NWA was his best run, from the mid 80s to the end of the 80s, I think is my favorite period of Flair. Everyone's got their own, but you're absolutely right. That was snafu on my part.
No, because you weren't alone. There was multiple people I saw, and even shout outs to Hurricane Helms, great WWE wrestler himself. He even said, "I can't agree with this list with no Flair," and I'm just like, I understand Hurricane Helms. He's a big North Carolina guy. He loves him some Ric Flair, but I just. Thinking about the history of Ric Flair's career, I couldn't legitimately put him in that first, like even that first top 10. And then when the list was expanding to top 20, I couldn't put him in that either because I felt like there were people that needed to be ahead of him. But that was like my number one is what they did in WWE, their drawing power. Then it became who was kind of considered number one overall guys, like their standing, their position in the company. That was the third thing that I looked at. Then finally, something that I always think very highly of, it was the fourth thing I thought of, is who was the best in the ring, who delivered kind of like memorable matches. And then right under the matches was the memorable moments and what they contribute in that factor. And then all of it came down to the last criteria is their legacy to WWE. And sometimes I think that the position of what I put these original top 10 was based on their entire legacy, meaning what they did after their in-ring career was over, because I had to position certain people ahead of certain people because of what they have accomplished since their career has been over and how that's contributed to WWE as well. So that was originally God.
Yeah, no, sorry to cut you off. And I think, much to your point, I was looking at, I think it's number 13 or 14. I won't say it until we discuss it, but that's a guy who, if it wasn't for him, and you even say it in the article, if it wasn't for him, there would have been no huge main event in one of the, first WrestleManias. And, he played the foil to the all-time hero and, what's a hero without a villain? So, That's completely understood. And I think legacy is a great criteria because, and that's something we don't see until years later, right? Like we're in the moment, especially for now, like we can't tell whose legacy as far as active WWE superstars now, what the power of their legacy until maybe 10 years later when we go, oh, okay, he helped bridge the gap from that generation to this generation and helped open doors for certain things. And sometimes it takes that later perspective to see that.
100% agreed there. So then after I put together the top 10, Harris came back to me, I think just like 2-3 weeks later, and he wanted it to expand to a top 20. So I followed the same criteria, added a couple of more names, and that's how we came up with this top 20 greatest WWE wrestlers of all time. But without further ado, Dariel, why don't we look at this list? So we'll drop this here. We'll add the screen here so people can see it here. The top 20 greatest wrestlers of all time. And at number 20, the only woman who made the list for me was Becky Lynch. And this one was also one that I've gotten heat from my friends who are big Charlotte Flair fans, a couple of my friends that are Sasha Banks and Bayley fans. But Becky Lynch is the woman that I think deserved to be in this top 20 list the most, mainly because I feel like she's the only woman that could have the moniker of saying she was the number one overall star in all of WWE. 2019, after winning the main event of WrestleMania 35 in New York at MetLife Stadium, with the added kind of caveat and the kind of the little spark note, if you want to put like an asterisk next to it, mainly it's because the guy who was supposed to be the number one guy, Roman Reigns, was out for so long from the end of 2018 into early 2019. He made his return at WrestleMania, but he didn't get his footing as the number one guy until like a year later during the pandemic. Becky Lynch took the moniker of the number one overall star in all of WWE when it came to that drawing power and what she positioned the women's division at. That's why I had to put Becky on this list. What did you think?
Yeah, and I think, for one, I'm surprised there was only one female, but I get it. It wasn't until the last decade that female wrestling became such a big box office attraction for WWE. And when you're talking about big box office attraction for WWE, male or female, Becky is definitely in that discussion, from that bloody nose, that iconic image that she got from Nia Jax, which I think that's where she came up with the moniker, the Man, which strangely, I think Ric Flair sued over, which is very weird to me. And she's had incredible matches. She main evented in WrestleMania. I think she was a first draft pick during one of the drafts. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she was the first draft pick at one. Right. And she's had matches with everyone, from Sasha Banks to Charlotte Flair. If there was anyone to contend with Becky Lynch as far as the only female spot on this list, I would say Charlotte Flair as well. They've had similar trajectories as far as their time in the business, the amount of titles they won. But I think when it comes to the female that was able to break through that bubble at the very highest of its limits is Becky Lynch.
Agreed there. Then you had I'll combine the next couple together here because you had number 19, Mick Foley, the hardcore legend. Then we had at number 18, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho made this list. I got some heat for that one as well. And then CM Punk at number 17. And I think that, Foley, Jericho, and Punk, I kind of grouped them kind of together here with this bunched up because they were kind of guys that I felt were never supposed to be number one guys. And for Foley and Jericho, I don't think they can ever kind of take the moniker and say that they were number one guys in WWE, but their accomplishments and their legacy that they left on WWE, I felt like they had to make this list. What do you think about those three? And do you think that I got those right as far as the position with Punk being ahead of Jericho and Foley?
I mean, it's really hard to say in terms of positioning when they're this close together. Foley definitely deserves to be on the list. Punk and Jericho to me are a little questionable, I will say personally.
Okay.
But then again, I haven't analyzed the box office numbers the way you have. So just from my own bias, I probably wouldn't have Jericho on the list. I maybe would have replaced him with Rey Mysterio.
That's
I'm a
fair.
huge, yeah, I'm a huge Ray mark, by the way. So that there's a lot of bias in when I say that, but I think he's the greatest in-ring superstar that ever was. Um, Merchandise, he sold a ton of merchandise too.
Yeah.
Foley's amazing. He is absolutely the number one guy. That's the most unlikeliest pro wrestler of all time. He never had the body for it, but he just had that psychology, man. He could tell a story in the ring. He could tell a story on the mic. And he was one of those, huge superstars in the Attitude Era, which of course is one of, if not the biggest era of pro wrestling, in terms of box office and dollar for dollar, whatever inflation is. And he was a big part of that. He was in the main event of WrestleMania 2000. He had that amazing, in my opinion, 5-star match with Triple H at Royal Rumble 2000, I think it was, which was one of my favorite matches of that era. And Punk's incredible. From the time that he joined WWE to his return now, he never fails to deliver on the mic. He's one of the best on the mic of all time. And he's a huge box office attraction even now into his 40s. So I mean, all three guys are amazing. So I can't really argue too much other than say that Jericho and Punk will probably be a little sus for me.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
This is why we have these type of discussions, because you're not going to agree with this entire list. I would say when I had to add the 10 more names for the top 20, I did add kind of in my head more criteria than the ones we just go over, and I think like accomplishments and promo ability were the two that I kind of thought about. And I think that's why, names like a Rey Mysterio might have not made my list, because I never felt like he was kind of like that type of guy as far as on the promos. And when you look at just pure accomplishments, Jericho does have more than Rey Mysterio. And I think that you're probably right. Rey is the bigger draw than Jericho, but Jericho, I think, has had more great matches in WWE because of how long he was in that company through the different runs that he had, and the feuds with like Shawn Michaels, with Triple H, I think just edge him out over Rey Mysterio. So that is my little comeback to the Rey argument there.
And it's valid. It's valid. One of my favorite matches of all time is Michaels and Jericho WrestleMania 19. So was that WrestleMania 19?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm getting older now, so my memory fails me sometimes, but that's one of my all-time favorite matches. So there you go.
Then we got at number 16 here, one of the all-time greats, one of the OGs of the WWE, Andre the Giant. Then you have Randy Orton at number 15, Edge coming in at number 14, and number 13. Let's see if my screen will allow it. I know I have a lot going on here, so my screen is like, I don't know if I can agree with this. Roddy Piper was number 13. So 13, Roddy Piper, 14, Edge, 15 was Randy Orton, and 16, Andre the Giant. Anything you want to mention about these, or do you think that all of these belong on the list, or is there one that you would say is sus once again?
So thank you for quoting me. First, I would say Andre the Giant, absolutely. He deserves to be in, either the top 15 or maybe even the top 10, but definitely the top 20. He was a good guy for almost all of his career. And then when he had that heel turn going towards WrestleMania 3, he became pretty much the biggest villain at that point that WWE had ever seen, arguably bigger than Roddy Piper. And, they drew, arguably or questionably 93,000, or from other reports it's like 70 something, but it doesn't matter. It was a huge gate for that time, and that much of that was due to Andre the Giant. I couldn't have seen WrestleMania 3 having a bigger gate with any other villain other than Andre. He absolutely made that match, and even at a reduced work rate, because of his injuries, he still crushed it. Like, they told a great story, and the slam was, is today one of the most iconic images that we ever seen, or video clips And it's played at the beginning of almost every single, WWE show. You see that iconic slam. The only one I would say I love Randy where he's at. I love who else do you have here? Edge. Edge is fantastic. When you talk about art, he is R. Like his entrances were amazing. I remember it was another moment at WrestleMania 24 where it was him in the main event. Him and was it WrestleMania 24 that he was in the main event?
Undertaker.
With Undertaker, right? Yeah. So I was getting that mixed up with the triple threat because there was a triple threat there for a title with Orton, Triple H, and Cena. But he headlined that pay-per-view, and his entrance by far was the coolest thing I saw at that show, even better than the Undertaker's. And that's saying a lot. Edge just has that aura, and he's got those incredible facial expressions. He was, in his prime, incredibly athletic, and he told great stories in the ring, and he sold a lot of merch, dude. He's one of the greatest villains WWE ever seen. The only one I would say is sus is Rod, and I hate saying this is Roddy Piper, because I'm a huge Roddy Piper fan. He is one of the greatest on the mic of all time. I would say his input into the business was lower than I would have liked. Like for this list, he was in and out of the company so many times. I don't, years wise, he was there for a long time, but as far as matches go, he didn't really have as many matches as pretty much anyone else on this list in the WWE. He had his time at NWA, and I think he's one of the only people that did Starrcade and WrestleMania too. So he's on that list, and he's a legend. He's incredible, but I would have probably put him a little bit later on this list than where he's at.
I think really like Piper is the category that really got Piper as high as I put him is legacy. His legacy as like the first major villain in WWE, and his importance in the rise of someone else on this list who's in the top 3. I think that is why I had to put him as high as I did. The reason that I grouped these 4 together is because I really viewed them as like the villain section of this the bottom 10 of the top 20 is that, Andre, his legacy elevated after a great run as a babyface when he was the heel opposite Hulk Hogan. And then Randy Orton, one of the greatest heels of like the 2000s of the Ruthless Aggression era. It's the same with Edge, and Edge is so important to someone else who made the top 5 as well with his career. And then Piper, I think that he is so crucial to that rock and wrestling era, and without Piper, I don't think that Hogan would be as high on this list as where he wound up.
Yeah, and I completely agree with all those points, especially the way Edge played foil to so many of the top heroes during, the last 20 years. He absolutely did that, and that's something I wasn't thinking of. So he definitely deserves his spot on his list. And you even mentioned in the article, the TLC match, before he was a single superstar, that match completely changed the landscape of pro wrestling. At that point, we've never seen high wire stunts like that in WWE other than Mick Foley's fall off the cage in '98. So, and this, this took it a step further, because you see guys jumping off a 20-foot ladder, not into the ring, but out of the ring through two tables. I mean, it was amazing. It was a mind-blowing match, and certainly deserves his place in history, as does he.
100% agree there. So let's finish up with this bottom half before we get into the top 10. Number 12 was Kurt Angle for me here. Then number 11, this one, he was like immediately when I was given the task of doing the next 10, I was like, the first person I thought of, Macho Man Randy Savage, because Macho Man Randy Savage was probably what I would call my biggest omission from the top 10. And I tried to work it out, and it was a really kind of a toss-up for me between Macho Man and who I had at number 10 on the original list. But Macho Man Randy Savage had to be at the top of the next 10. So he came in at number 11. What do you think about Angle at 12, Macho Man at 11?
I think they're right where they should be. Angle is, in my opinion, if you're going to have a Mount Rushmore of in-ring performers, he's in that discussion. When he was in his prime, he was incredible. The way he took bumps, just from the way he told stories in the ring. His match with Rey Mysterio at SummerSlam, I remember And then their subsequent matches on SmackDown, incredible. You know, SmackDown had that little time period where they had Benoit and Jericho and Angle and the Guerreros and the world's greatest tag team, and they had like this amazing lineup of talent there that were just really stealing the show. They were doing way better than they should have been doing, and really outclassing Raw at that time. And I remember SmackDown at that time, it was the must-see show every week because of guys like Angle and the Guerreros and their work ethic. Their work ethic was crazy. Like, I can't remember who it was, but there was a legend back then when Kurt was in his prime with WWE that told him like to take it easy on the bumps. And he was absolutely right, because Kurt was taking some nasty bumps, man. He would take these bumps right on the back of his neck. And I mean, he was incredible in the ring as far as an athlete. And why not? You know, he's an Olympic medalist. Like, that guy, if you're going to have an incredible athlete like Angle, you want him to have those high caliber matches. And as far as Macho Man goes, I too would have had trouble not fitting him in the top 10, because through the Rock and Wrestling era and then into the Mega Powers brother and the Mega Powers explode and all that whole angle, like, that really carried WWE through those couple of years, you know, through WrestleMania 4 and 5 and so on. And then, you know, he started to wind down his career. But during the height of those years, you know, it was him and Hogan, and him and Million Dollar Man. Macho Man was having great matches really with everyone. And then, of course, the WrestleMania 3 not main event, but the Intercontinental title match with Steamboat and Savage is an all-time classic. So I think they're right where they should be. Good job, Sid. You nailed it.
Thank you so much. Then we got into the top 10. Had to get, this was the one. It was between Macho and Bruno Sammartino, but I had to get Bruno into the top 10 somehow, some way. Then we got Bret the Hitman Hart at number 9. Bret's longtime rival Shawn Michaels at number 8. And then number 7, you have Triple H. So I will give you a little bit of kind of backstory, pulling back the curtain a bit. This was probably the toughest section of my top 10, the original list that I did of my top 10, because I was like, how do I position? Like, Bruno at 10, like I said, it was between Bruno and Macho Man. But from 9 through 7, I was like, okay, who do I put above who? Like, Bret above Michaels, maybe I could do that. And then I was like, well, Triple H, he should probably be behind both of these guys, should be behind Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. But that is why I talked about the criteria beforehand, legacy and what they accomplished outside of the ring. That is why I had to put the members of DX, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels ahead of Bret Hart, because of what they have done since the end of their in-ring careers. The fact that Shawn Michaels is the head of NXT and developing the next generation of WWE, his legacy is just going to even get greater over the next couple of years. And then Triple H being the head of creative of WWE, and then everything he accomplished in NXT as well. That is why. And I'm personally well known, for any of my friends watching this, they know I am not a Triple H guy. I have hated Triple H for a very long time. Yes, because first it was because of the kayfabe, and then in the 2000s, being in high school, you learn about the dirt sheets and learn about the political things he did, right. And then marrying the boss's daughter and all of that. It was like, I was never. Baby. It is a power move, but I was never a Triple H guy. But I had, like I said, I had to take my objectivity out of this and my biases out of this, and I had to put Triple H ahead of both Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, who I think are two of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. So what do you think about 7 through 10 here?
Yeah, this is I understand why you had trouble with this section, because a lot of these guys, except for Bruno, in my opinion, are pretty interchangeable in these spots. And you know, Bruno was well before my time, and I know of his legacy, and I know he's one of the longest, if not the longest, WWE reigning, WWE
the longest by far. 7-year reign. 7-year reign.
So that was even longer than Backlund?
Yes.
Okay. So
by 3 years.
Okay. Yeah. Oh wow. All right. So yeah. And that was when Senior was running the company. So I don't know much about the company then. You know, I started watching and you know, in the late 80s, and then, you know, caught up in all the stuff previously. But I know of Bruno's legacy. So I think it's fine that he's where he's at now. Where it comes to Michaels, Hart, and Triple H, any of those guys you can flip flop in any of the places that they're at on this list. I remember in my freshman year at university, I had a poster of Triple H on my wall because I was a Triple H guy, and he's like in front of a Hummer and his wingspan is like covering the entire front of the Hummer, and I was like, I want to be jacked like that. But Michaels and Brett, you certainly can't discount their contributions to the business and their feud. And I was just talking to Natty the other day, and she was telling me that the same thing that you're saying. Triple H and Shawn Michaels really are shaping and molding the future of this business, or at least where the business is at the highest of levels. And they're doing a great job. Like Triple H's pen is amazing, dude. He's booking the hell out of these shows. They're doing phenomenal. He's doing long-term storytelling, and this is on top of a 20-year plus career where he absolutely crushed it, man. Like some of his, I remember his match with another guy that's later on, that's higher up on this list, being one of my favorite matches of all time. Triple H and and I've said that a couple times, but this is probably in my top three, and I'll talk about it when we get there. But like Triple H and Stone Cold, Triple H and Angle, Triple H and Mankind, like all of those matches were all 5-star matches, even though Meltzer probably doesn't think so. But they really carried the company through so many years, and his longevity can't be discounted either. So I think you could interchange any of those spots. All those guys are super important to this business.
Yeah, honestly, any of these three could have been in the top 5. If I had different criteria, I could have worked it out where any of those three were in the top 5 of this list. But let's get into the top 6. We'll go with the next 3 first. We got number 6, The Undertaker. That was another one who was kind of in that section of, okay, how do I position this above this? But Undertaker, his legacy, the WrestleMania streak, I had to have him just outside of the top 10. And then this is probably the one that probably got me the most kind of confusing looks or people question. Number 5, Roman Reigns. And I just did it based on the fact that if you ask anybody in this business, they're talking about Roman Reigns after the past 4 years and where the business is right now. See, they can't even get that information so good that my computer's stopping on me. There you go. Number 4, you got John Cena. So before we get into the top 3, what did you think about number 6, The Undertaker, number 5, Roman Reigns, and number 4, John Cena?
I would have switched Reigns and Taker. I think Reigns absolutely deserves to be in the top 10. He is the guy who has carried WWE through, and we all knew that he had that potential, but once he turned heel, now he's carried the WWE through the last 4 or 5 years of their narratives, of their business. Really, he's put this company on his back for almost the last 5 years or longer, and he's done it in an incredible way. He's easily the best actor in WWE right now. His mannerisms, for instance, he had that one, I believe he interfered in the cage match with Solo and Rhodes. And he had this one moment where he had yet to go toe to toe with Jacob Fatu, and Fatu's outside the ring, and Roman just gives him like a little like this, and it was just so perfectly timed, and like I literally got goosebumps when that moment happened, and that is such a great example of how well he's adapted to the top tier of this business and of this industry. He's incredible. But even more incredible, I think, is Undertaker. Undertaker did it for much longer, and just his longevity and his box office attraction for so long, I would have put him a spot above Roman Reigns. But I'm nitpicking, man. I'm splitting hairs. That's just one, interchanging a spot or two. I mean, both are incredible to the business, and I'm huge fans of both.
Yeah, and then John Cena, man, this was hard to even keep him out of the top 3, because I think that John Cena is like one of the GOATs of this business, but he's definitely on my Mount Rushmore, so that's why I had to get him at number 4. But yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I totally understand that, him being on many Mount Rushmores, and he deserves that spot. But for me, as a fan, like, I am not a John Cena. I'm a fan of the man. I'm a fan of his contributions to the business. I'm just not a fan of the John Cena character. That never really connected with me. It was too saccharine, a bit too saccharine. I'm dark. I'm damaged inside. So I need the guys on the edge.
That's fair. That's fair. But I don't know if what else John Cena could have done to get above the next three here. But the top three is number three, The Rock, number two, Hulk Hogan, and number one, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think like when I was given the task of this top 10 first, top 10 WWE wrestlers, I kind of had these names in mind. Like those are the first three
Right.
names that I thought of. I was like, Austin is probably number one, number two, Hulk Hogan, number three, The Rock. I was like, that had to be my top three to top this list. Do you have any issues? Do you think someone else, maybe Hogan or Rock, should have been number one over Austin? And what do you think overall about the top three?
Now it starts to get really hard because now despite the criteria, you have to really start looking at it granularly when you're talking about the top three WWE superstars of all time. Stone Cold Steve Austin, for me, he would be my number one. Him, Hogan, and Rock again could all be interchangeable. Hogan carried the WWE through its greatest boom period. It took it from obscurity and brought it into the mainstream. No one had ever done that at that time, and Hogan was championing the business at that time, not just WWE, but the entire wrestling business, and everyone made more money because of him. Even people outside of WWE, he put the spotlight on wrestling during the 80s and early 90s. Now, when you're starting to get into the mid 90s and after, you got Stone Cold. Stone Cold, even before he was Stone Cold Steve Austin, when he was wrestling in WCW, he was having stellar matches, stuff with Ricky Steamboat, stuff with Arn Anderson. He was incredible, stuff with Sting. And so he always had the work rate. But when he came over to WWE and he donned the black tights and later on the black knee the black knee braces, and because that was part of his look too. He became this icon of wrestling that I don't think even to this day has been replicated. And I think a lot of people, when they think about Stone Cold Steve Austin, they think about just the character and the beer guzzling and spraying people with beer and hitting the stunners on Vince McMahon. But one thing they forget is just his incredible work rate in the ring. His matches with Kurt Angle were top notch. His matches with Triple H, especially that 3 Stages of Hell match, were top notch. So everything he did, like if you go back and watch his stuff from in his prime, from late 90s to early 2000s, 2001, 2002, when he pretty much stopped, he never stops moving in the ring. That guy was a workhorse. He was incredible. And I'm a huge Steve Austin fan. Hogan, of course, changed the business for the better. And what can you say more about Rock that hasn't been said already? A lot of the boom period, I think, and this is something that can't be quantified, is because The Rock became the biggest box office star in the world. No wrestler has ever had that achievement before, and maybe never again. Hopefully we see something like that with Batista and some other guys later, but that is a huge achievement, and that happened right when he became the biggest box office attraction in the world in movies. Wrestling started getting into their next boom period, at least the biggest boom period since the Attitude Era. And I don't think those things, I do think those things are interlinked in some way. But again, that's not quantifiable. But Rock's impact, and you talk about legacies, Rock's impact and legacy can't be discounted. Neither can Stone Cold's or Hogan. So I really think you nailed it with this top three. Stone Cold, I'm a Stone Cold guy. I love Stone Cold, so I would definitely put him, just for bias, at the top of the list. But I think these guys are right where they should be.
So, who would you say is the biggest omission to you from this top 20?
So there's a couple guys that I would say could have been thrown on here. I would say Lesnar, despite the fact that he's in pretty hot water right now, and we may never see him again in WWE. But I mean, he was a huge attraction for WWE for over a decade. He's probably the most incredible physical specimen the WWE has ever seen, or professional wrestling has ever seen. To be that big, that jacked, and that fast, and that, like, he was taking bumps like a cruiserweight was taking bumps. He would bounce off the canvas, 2 feet in the air. Like that, there's something really special about that guy, and we may never see an athlete like that again. And he was, despite the fact that he was never good on the mic, at least until later, he was incredible. Like he was this next generation's Andre the Giant, where you see a guy like that and you're just like, damn, like that guy's going to kill everyone, you know? He had that raw animal magnetism that I don't think a lot of people have even today. So I would maybe throw him on there. And then, you know, Rollins and Bryan Danielson, they're two guys that could have been possibly thrown on the list. Albeit they'd be later, you know, maybe in the bottom half or the bottom five, but those are guys that I think could have possibly made the list without looking at their box office records. But those are guys that had incredible matches. They've had incredible runs. Bryan's wasn't as long as Rollins, so I'd probably rank Rollins a little bit higher, but you know, it is what it is. It's your list, Sid. So I'm just commentating on it.
No, you. As soon as you said Brock Lesnar, I was like, yeah, that's my biggest omission. That was the one where when I said submit to our editor extraordinaire, I was like, damn, I wish I had that one back. I probably would have been. I was like, that was the one time. That was the one person that I probably let my knowledge of what's going on with him currently affect my ability to take that away and put him on this list, because he is one of the guys that, you know, just when you think about box office draws, especially in the 2010s, after his return in 2012, he was the number one guy in this company from ending the streak in 2014 all the way through until probably like 2017, 2018, where he was trying to pass the torch to Roman Reigns. It was pretty much Brock as the number one guy in WWE. And when you have like a 4 to 5 year stretch of you being the number one guy, you should have made this list. So that's probably my personal biggest omission from this top 20.
Yeah, and I totally understand that you admitted him. I probably would have too, because we really don't want to promote a guy that's you know, embroiled in something as you know, controversial as he is now. And you know, I don't know exactly what the evidence is, or you know, what he's actually done, if he's done anything at all. He hasn't been accused. I mean, he's been accused, but he hasn't been charged with anything. So, but that being said, I would have omitted him off the list as well. But in terms of just his work in WWE and not counting outside controversies, he probably deserves to be on there.
Yeah. But any other questions or statements you want to talk about with this top 20 before we wrap things up, Dario?
No, man, you killed it. Like I'm super proud of what you did with this list, and I'm happy to have you as a colleague. And it's amazing that it's getting out there as much as it should. You know, we are Sports Illustrated's #1 voice of pro wrestling, so we want to provide people with this kind of content, and I'm happy I'm just a part of it. I'm happy to be a part of a team that's doing this. So follow me on Figgy Flow at X. Let me throw up my plug real quick. Yeah, that's right. Do my oh yeah, perfect, right? Dude, next time we got to pull that off in sync, in tandem. But no, thanks for having me, Sid.
Nah, thanks, man. And yeah, check out Dariel's work, because he's doing a lot of like the footwork over on the Takedown on SI, doing a lot of the news coverage. I know you're going to be doing opinion pieces as well, but check out SI.com, the Takedown on SI, because it's a great team we've put together with Rick Ucchino, with Zach, with Adam, with Steven. This whole team has really been put together very well by Harrison Friedman. So thank you to him. Thank you to Rick for setting us up on the YouTube channel here, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because we'll be doing more discussions like this on certain lists that we do, as well as discussions about hot topics in pro wrestling. And this is the #1 source for the video interviews that SI is contributed, some of the best interviews in wrestling media today. So check it out.
A lot more coming soon. We have a lot of awesome stuff in the pipeline for this YouTube channel. So definitely smack that subscribe button.
Indeed. But for Dariel Figueroa, it is me, your True Hill Phenom, SP3. We are signing off for the Takedown discussions on the Takedown on SI.